Hey everybody, Mr. Dustin here. Welcome to Bible class today. We are going to talk today about a decision that two men made. One of them chose wisely. One of them chose poorly. So let's get to it. So we've been talking about Abraham, depending on when in the story you talk about it, because his name changed. But when he started out, he was called Abram. And he was a man that acted on faith. Now, if you remember your memory verse, Hebrews 11 verse 1, can you say it? Now faith is being sure of what we hope for and certain of what we do not see. And then Hebrews 11 verse 8, do you remember that one? By faith, Abraham, when called to go to a place he would later receive as an inheritance, obeyed and went, even though he did not know where he was going. So he's a man of faith. He was called up from Ur of the Chaldeans, and then he went with his family to Haran, and then he left from there to go to the Canaan land. And it's interesting because he was called to go to this place. God said he was going to give him a land that he would show him. And in verse 5, he took his wife Sarai, his nephew Lot, all the possessions he had accumulated, and the people they had acquired in Haran, and they set out for the land of Canaan, and they arrived there. Abram traveled through the land as far as the side of the great tree of Moreh at Shechem. At that time, the Canaanites were in the land. The Lord appeared to Abram and said, "To your offspring I will give this land." So he built an altar there to the Lord who had appeared to him. So it said at the moment, the Canaanites were in the land. Do you remember where the Canaanites came from? Maybe? Well, if you look back just a couple of chapters, in chapter 9, you read about Noah and his sons. And there was kind of a weird incident that happened. And in that incident, Noah said, "Cursed be Canaan." It was actually the son of Ham, Noah's son. But that wasn't all he said. Let's read. He says, "Cursed be Canaan, the lowest of slaves will he be to his brothers." This is also important, verse 26 and 7. "Praise be to the Lord, the God of Shem. May Canaan be the slave of Shem." May God extend Japheth's territory. May Japheth live in the tents of Shem, and may Canaan be the slave of Japheth. It's kind of interesting. So God is planning to give Abram is a descendant of Shem, the Canaan land. The land of Canaan. In other words, the land that the son of Ham, Canaan, all that land. Interesting. So this is starting to happen now. We're actually seeing these things take place that Noah said a long time before this. But God told Noah, he said, told Abram, "Go look at this land. I promise that I'm going to give you a land that I'm going to show you." And as he went through the land, as they were traveling through it the first time, he said, "I'm going to give this land to you." But it wasn't the only time. They went down to Egypt, and then whenever they were coming back, he and Lot had become quite wealthy. And they got into the land once again, basically to the exact same place, near Bethel, where he built an altar. And so, as they were there, quarreling, verse 7 says, arose between Abram's herders and Lot's. In other words, their shepherds. They were fighting against each other because there wasn't enough space for both of them. And so, the Canaanites and Perizzites were still living in the land at that time. Abram said, though, he said to Lot, "Let's not have any quarreling between you and me, or between your herders, your shepherds, and mine, for we are close relatives. Is not the whole land before you? Let's part company. If you go to the left, I'll go to the right. If you go to the right, I'll go to the left." So Lot, he looked around, and he saw that the whole plain of the Jordan toward Zoar was well watered, like the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt. This was before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. So, Lot chose for himself the whole plain of the Jordan and set out toward the east. The two men parted company. Abram lived in the land of Canaan, while Lot lived among the cities of the plain and pitched his tents near Sodom. Now, the people of Sodom were wicked and were sinning greatly against the Lord. Lot chose to go toward what looked to be the best land. What did Abram say? He looked around and he did not choose for himself. He said to Lot, "You choose. If you go to the right, I'll go left. If you go left, I'll go right. You choose." That's a very selfless thing to do. And you might say that what Lot did was selfish. He was thinking about himself and saying, "I'm going to take the very best land for myself." Abram did give him the choice, though. So I wonder if that was a good idea. Whenever you really think about what happens with Lot, and if you remember Sodom and Gomorrah gets destroyed, maybe it wasn't such a good idea for Lot. But then again, it kept Abram from going there. Let's see what else happens, though. This is starting in verse 14 in chapter 13 of Genesis. The Lord said to Abram, after Lot had parted from him, "Look around where you are, to the north and south, to the east and west. All the land that you see, I will give to you and your offspring forever." And he makes the promise again. "I will make your offspring like the dust of the earth, so that if anyone could count the dust, then your offspring could be counted. Go, walk through the length and breadth of the land, for I am giving it to you." So he went to live near the great trees of Mamre at Hebron, where he pitched his tents, and there he built an altar to the Lord. God promised him once again. He said, "This land, you were here at this very same place. You built an altar." He said, "Look around. This is the land I'm giving to you and your descendants." And then he promised him again, "Here, go look around, north, east, southwest, all of the land that you see, I will give to you and to your descendants forever." And Lot chose what looked like the best land. Maybe somewhat of a selfish decision. But Abram, more importantly, Abram said, "Whatever you choose, I'm going to go the opposite way." He didn't make the choice for him. That's a very selfless thing to do. He was thinking more about other people than he was thinking about himself. I think that's an important lesson for us. The New Testament said, "In humility, consider others better than yourselves." So I want to ask you, really think about this and maybe take some time to write some notes down. What are some things that you can do that would be selfless? That's really a hard thing. But think about it. Maybe it's sharing with other people. Maybe it's letting someone else have the last of your favorite dessert. I don't know. What are things that you can do that are selfless instead of selfish? Because that's what our example is in Jesus. He was selfless. He emptied himself, becoming in the very nature a servant, like human, that he could be obedient to God, that he would offer himself on the cross for us. That's selfless. That's our example. That's what we need to follow. So really think about, how can you be more selfless to be more like Jesus, like Abraham made this good decision here. Now, it is important. It is not always easy to follow our faith in God. Sometimes it's very difficult, and sometimes it can be very scary. In fact, just before this, in chapter 12, whenever it said they went down to Egypt, Abram was actually very much scared. And he went to where God sent him, but he was afraid. And he followed anyway. And I think it's important that that happened, because he followed in faith and he did all the things that God asked him to do. He stumbled every once in a while, but he did all the things that God asked him to do. And all of these things were part of the will of God being played out. The wheels of motion were in motion, moving. because God was planning to bring Jesus into the world to be a blessing to all nations through Abram. And that is an important thing. So thank you for coming to Bible class today. I hope that this was something that's interesting to you, but also challenges you just a little bit to remember, how can I be selfless? Anyway, thanks for coming, and I hope to see you next time. Have a good week.